Tu Sam sat motionless on the edge of her small rented bed, her trembling hands still gripping the crumpled pregnancy test. 2 red lines, clear, bold, undeniable. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely breathe. No, this cannot be happening. She had already gone through one painful chapter of life as a single mother. She had promised herself no more mistakes, no more heartbreaks. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. A sudden rush of memories flooded her mind. Late-night conversations, gentle smiles, warm embraces. Ly, the quiet yet determined man who had walked into her life when she least expected it. He was not the father of her first child, but he had unexpectedly become a father figure, a protector, a friend, and perhaps, something more. She had spent months convincing herself that what happened between them was nothing more than a moment of weakness, just one night. One night when she was exhausted, hopeless, and desperately in need of comfort. Ly had simply been there. But now this test was telling her that the consequences of that night had just become real. Her legs gave out, and she fell to the floor, tears spilling from her eyes. Why now? When everything was finally getting better, she whispered, covering her mouth so her little son in the next room wouldn't hear. Fear clawed at her chest. What would Ly say? Would he deny it? Would he blame her? Would he walk away? She didn't even know if she had the right to tell him. Outside, the evening rain began to fall, tapping softly against the window. The world was quiet, but inside to Sam's heart, a storm had just begun. For the next 3 days, Tu Sam avoided Ly. She didn't answer his calls. She didn't reply to his messages. She even changed the path she usually took when walking her son to school, just to make sure she wouldn't accidentally run into him. But Ly was not a man who gave up easily. On the 4th evening, just as she was closing her small noodle shop, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Tall, calm, with that gentle yet persistent look in his eyes. "Sam," Ly said quietly, his voice softer than usual. "Did I do something wrong?" Tu Sam froze. She forced a smile, pretending to be busy stacking bowls. "No, I've just been tired lately. Too much work." Ly stepped closer, studying her face. He could see it, her swollen eyes, her pale lips, the way her hands trembled slightly. "You're lying," he said calmly, not accusing, just stating a fact. Her heart raced. He knows, or at least, he feels something is wrong. "I don't want to talk about it," she muttered, turning away. But Ly reached out and gently held her wrist, not forcefully, just enough to stop her from running again. "Sam," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "If you're in trouble, let me help." Tears burned in her eyes. Help? How could she even ask for that? She wasn't even sure if he would accept the truth. She slowly pulled her hand back. "Ly, if I tell you something, promise me you won't get angry." Ly's eyes narrowed slightly, alarm flashing across his expression. "Sam, what is it?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The words wouldn't come out. Her throat tightened. Ly gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sam, please, I can handle anything. Just don't shut me out." Her lips trembled. "Now, tell him, or lose him forever." She finally looked up, meeting his eyes. "Ly," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I think I'm pregnant." Silence. The world seemed to stop. Ly didn't move, his expression unreadable. Tu Sam lowered her gaze in fear, her hands clenching tightly around her apron. If you don't want it, I won't bother you," she said, her voice barely audible. "Just pretend I never told you." She turned away, preparing herself for rejection. But before she could take a step, Ly spoke. His voice was low and trembling. "Is it mine? Is it mine?" Ly's voice was barely more than a breath, but it echoed in Tu Sam's ears like thunder. Tu Sam stood frozen. She could not lift her head, she could not speak. The truth was simple, but speaking it felt like stepping off a cliff. Finally, she nodded, only slightly, but Ly saw it. He exhaled slowly, almost as if he had been holding his breath for years. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. He was too still, too quiet. Sam's heart pounded in fear. He's going to walk away. He must be thinking I'm too much trouble. I'm sorry, she whispered shakily. I know this must be a shock. I didn't plan for this. I didn't even want to tell you. But, before she could finish, Ly suddenly stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. Tightly, firmly, as if he was afraid she might disappear. Sam stiffened in surprise. Then, slowly, her resistance collapsed. She let herself sink into his embrace, trembling. Ly's voice came low beside her ear. Sam, why didn't you tell me sooner? She hesitated, her voice breaking. Because I was scared. Scared of what? Me. No. She shook her head slowly. Scared that you would feel trapped. That you would think I used this to tie you down. That you would regret ever getting involved with me. Ly let out a shaky laugh, not of amusement, but of disbelief and heartbreak. Sam, he said, pulling back just enough to meet her eyes. How could I regret something that came from you? Sam's vision blurred with tears. Ly gently placed a hand over her stomach. His touch was careful, almost reverent. So, there's a little version of us in there, he whispered, a faint smile tugging at his lips, despite the emotions tightening his throat. Sam choked on a laugh. Maybe. Ly's expression suddenly turned serious. Sam, he said firmly, from now on, no more facing things alone. Whether you like it or not, I'm staying. Her lips trembled. Even if I'm difficult, even if I panic, even if I push you away again, then I'll push back harder. She stared at him, stunned. Ly smiled gently. You're not alone anymore, Sam. And for the first time in years, she believed it. Just when the air between them had finally softened into something safe and warm, a small voice cut through the silence. Mom. Sam froze. Ly's hand, still resting protectively over her stomach, also went still. Slowly she and Ly turned toward the doorway. Standing there was Gia, Sam's 10-year-old son. His eyes were wide not with innocence, but with a hurt far too heavy for a child his age. He stared at Ly's hand, then at Sam, then at her stomach. Is it true? Gia whispered. You're having a baby. Sam's lips parted, but no sound came out. Gia's hands clenched into fists. Whose is it? His voice trembled, but his eyes were sharp, defensive, afraid. Sam began, but he stepped back. Is it his? He pointed at Ly, his voice rising, raw and shaking. So he came here to replace me. Ly took a careful step forward. Gia, listen to me. No. Gia shook his head violently. I don't want a new father. I don't want a new baby. I don't want you to forget me. Sam's heart crumpled. In that moment, she realized, while she was drowning in fear of abandonment, her child was drowning in fear of being abandoned. She rushed forward, kneeling down to his level, holding him firmly by the shoulders. Gia, listen to me, she said, voice thick with emotion. No one could ever replace you. You were my first miracle, my first reason to live. Nothing in this world will change that. But Gia was trembling. His voice cracked. Then why are you crying because of him? Why are you letting him hold you? You never let anyone close before. Sam's throat tightened. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from guilt, but from the sheer ache of realizing how much her child had silently endured. She wanted to answer, but before she could, Ly stepped forward. Calm, steady, not defensive, not angry. He knelt too, beside Sam. He didn't touch Gia, he only looked at him with quiet sincerity. Gia, Ly said softly. You don't have to like me. You don't have to accept me right away. But I want you to know something. Gia glared with wet eyes. Ly continued gently. I'm not here to replace you. I'm here to protect both of you. Gia's lip trembled. Ly placed a hand over his own chest. I don't want your place. I want my own place. Not instead of you, but beside you. Silence. Sam held her breath. Gia looked between the two of them. His eyes wavered with uncertainty, fear, and something softer. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, but a beginning. Gia didn't answer. He didn't accept Ly, but he didn't reject him either. He simply turned around, muttering a quiet, stubborn, "I'm going to my room." Tu Sam exhaled shakily, unsure if she should follow him. But before she could move, Ly gently touched her arm. "Let him be," he whispered. "He's not angry at you. He's scared." Tu Sam's eyes softened with guilt. "He's just a child. He's been through so much. I don't know how to handle both him and her." Hand unconsciously went to her stomach. Ly covered it with his. "You won't be handling it alone." That night, Gia didn't come out for dinner. Tu Sam knocked on his door softly, placing a bowl of rice and grilled pork outside. He didn't respond. But when she came back an hour later, the bowl was empty. She smiled sadly. Progress. The next morning, when Ly came back to the house with fresh groceries, he didn't hand them to Sam. He placed them on the floor outside Gia's room, then knocked. No answer. So he began to speak calmly through the door. "I don't know if you like strawberries. I don't know if you like milk or soy. I don't know if you like sweet things or spicy things." He paused. "So I bought everything." A small shuffle came from inside. No reply, but listening. Ly continued with a faint chuckle. "I'm not trying to buy your forgiveness. I just want to learn. If you don't talk to me yet, that's fine. Just eat what you like, and throw away what you hate. I'll figure it out." For a long moment, there was silence. Then click. The door opened just an inch. A small hand reached out, grabbed a box of strawberry milk, and closed the door again. Ly didn't smile too brightly. He didn't celebrate out loud. He just whispered softly, almost to himself, "Thank you." Tu Sam, who had been hiding behind the hallway wall, watching everything, pressed a trembling hand over her mouth. Her eyes sparkled with tears. Not of sadness, not of fear, but of something she hadn't dared to feel in years. Hope. In life, pain often teaches us to build walls, but love teaches us how to open a door slowly, carefully, but bravely. Tu Sam spent years protecting herself and her son from hurt, believing that silence and distance were safer than trust. Yet when Ly stepped in, not with promises but with actions, he reminded her and us that healing does not come from being strong alone, but from allowing others to stand beside us. True love is not loud, it is patient. It does not demand immediate acceptance, nor does it push itself to be acknowledged. Instead, it waits at the door just like Ly did with Gia. Real family is not always built from blood, but from consistency, understanding, and small daily acts of kindness. And forgiveness does not mean forgetting the past. It means choosing not to let it poison the future. The greatest lesson here is simple, yet powerful. When life gives us a second chance, we must not let fear disguise itself as protection. Trust is risky, but loneliness is far more dangerous. Sometimes, opening the door just 1 inch like GR, reaching for the box of strawberry milk, is enough to let hope walk in.